I've seen things over this last week.
So have
One
I.
Some of those things include.
one of them being Blade Runner, the
I
25th time or whatever. Um, and these guys, I think George, this is the first time that you watched Blade Runner, and Declan, I think you watched before.
I've seen it before, but it has been years.
Okay,
Mhm.
so what do you think of the whole thing?
It's an interesting case. When I first saw Blade Runner, and I genuinely mean like it's been at least 4, maybe 6 years since I've seen Blade
But
Runner.
not 5.
Yeah,
Not five,
not 5, I guess.
definitively.
When I first saw it,
In an even numbered
I
year.
when I first saw Blade Runner, I knew that it was a great film, but I didn't actually enjoy it. Well, like I respected it deeply, but I didn't actually enjoy it all that much. Like I wish I had. I wanted to like it, but I didn't.
Mhm.
On I think I tried to watch it again a couple months later, and again it just didn't click with me. On this rewatch, this first time in years, it has definitely improved in my estimation. I still don't know if I can truly say I love the film, like, but I feel I enjoyed it far more than I was worried I wouldn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it still. So that
Yeah.
like I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Ben, as you said, this was my first time seeing it. I didn't really know what to expect. I went in with an open mind. I wanted to really enjoy it because I know how much you love the film. And I knew we were going to be talking about it on the pod this week. So I went in with a really open mind. I love the world building. It's Declan, you and I were talking about it earlier. It's one of the best, you know, built for fictional media worlds
Honestly.
that's ever been put to screen. I think we can all agree on that. The way that they present Los Angeles 2019 feels futuristic, feels dystopian, what you want out of like an 80s sci-fi movie set on Earth. I think so. I think they did a really good job. Ridley Scott did a really good job of presenting his world and doing it in a way that feels like the audience hops right in from the outset. From the outset. You've got that opening crawl that covers basically everything you need to know for exposition. Sorry, Declan. But you know, then you're thrust pretty much right into the world of the film from the jump. You've got, the skyline of Los Angeles. You got explosions going off. This is not the Los Angeles in 1982. So world building, phenomenal, and that carries throughout. Harrison Ford. I mean, we'll talk about the cast later, I'm sure, Ben. But Rick Deckard, add him to the list of great Harrison Ford characters that I've seen. Probably not Han Solo, not Indiana Jones. Those two are, two of the most iconic characters in all of film history. Rick Deckard's probably a step below for me.
A step
but
below for Harrison Ford is like the greatest role many actors will
right,
ever
this
have.
Rick Deckard could have been a career maker for someone. Instead, it's it's down the filmography for Harrison Ford. So I loved his performance. I thought he was, you get enough of the swagger of Han Solo and Indiana Jones, but really you see, sort of that grizzled cop. I don't know if either of you have seen Witness that he did in 1985.
Yeah.
But you sort of see him a little bit more mature in this film, despite the fact that a year later he would be Han Solo again in Return of the Jedi, and he had only done one film as Indiana Jones. But he's a little bit more subdued for a lot of this film, which I think shows really good range on his part. So yeah, Harrison Ford, we'll talk more about him. Big bright spot in the movie. And then, the way that the story is executed. I think the pacing is an issue for me. It's a little slow. I think in an 80s action movie, I kind of want more action. or sorry, in an 80s sci-fi movie, I want more action. But that really wasn't the vibe of this film. And I think future rewatches of this movie will, let me appreciate it more for what it is, in just being a science fiction movie and not a sci-fi action movie.
Mm.
But yeah, I think the replicant idea is really fresh, adapted from the novel, and I think it's played out really well in a way that works for a film. So yeah, I would say it's not my favorite movie we've talked about on this pod, but it's definitely not my least favorite. I can say a lot more good than bad in Blade Runner, and I'll definitely see it again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess first time that I saw it, I was like, I don't know, 10, 11. I saw it with my dad, and I sort of enjoyed it, but I didn't really get it. So I've seen it, throughout the years, and every time I watch it, the reason that it's my favorite is because I get something out of it, something more. There's always something to find. There's a lot of depth to the film, and not just the story, but just the way that it's made. Cinematography is some of the best you will ever see in a sci-fi.
It's shot really well.
Um, the scene where he's doing the weight comp test for Rachel, where they have to put down the blinds because it's too bright.
Yeah.
It's perfectly set. I love that scene because it also shows there's a lot of depth, even though he doesn't have to even say too much to Tyrell. The way that he appears in this extremely tall building, you have to take the elevator all the way up. You got to see God, and that's really what he's supposed to be. He is the god of biomechanics, as Roy Batty puts it. Yeah, he pretty much created all of these people. And putting down the blinds, I always like, because it's like his control over the world.
Yeah. I like what you said there, control over the world, because Tyrell and his development of the replicants is responsible for the entire state of human existence at this point. This is what the world is because of him.
And certainly you see all of the like, I don't know if it's exactly Japanese, but there's a language that it's called.
Yeah.
But it's like a mix between Japanese and
if only there was like a place where like Harrison Ford could have like explained exactly what it was to the audience.
I think that's the beauty of the film, is that it does so much without having to tell you anything. And that's why I love it. Like going back and rewatching it, it's because you get something. You can just stare at a wall and you get more out of the world, because there's so much thought put into the world itself, to the characters, the setup. Everything is deliberate, even down to the very stylized acting. And, you can see that some parts are a bit more like noir, like the grizzled cop, and then he gets called and he's like, I don't work here anymore. I was like, hey, you got to do this job for me. But you've got Tyrell and Sebastian, two like sort of polar opposites. Sebastian, very smart, he creates life, but he's always living in fear, whereas Tyrell is living like a god.
Well, to your point, you say like,
or can I
go first?
I just want to say explicitly, I was making a joke based off
about the narration
that we watched the final cut rather than the theatrical cut.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. Anyway.
So what you say about these two characters, you've got one who is building life, but it's toys, and they're very clearly not fully sentient. They're not independent thinkers. They're not really capable of living beyond the walls of the home. And then you've got someone who develops living organisms.
Well, I think
who are
let me explain it, because Sebastian makes the genetic coding for the replicants.
So he does, but
create the bodies. I see your point. I was just making the technical distinction.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, you make a good point, which is Tyrell creates their mind, their consciousness, their emotions. He creates the life, essentially, the life as we see it, the conscious life of a human being, not just like an animal that doesn't think, doesn't know it's alive.
Yeah, I think like for some reason, and I don't quite know why, but like this is reminding me of how like I want to ask both of you. So like this a central question that people like to debate, possibly too much, about the film, is the idea of like, ooh, is Deckard a replicant? It's like if he was, he would
final cut. So you have watched the final cut now.
Yes.
So
yes, I have watched the final cut now.
Before you go any further, what do you think, George and Declan? Just for now, and then you can explain later.
I will put it as I believe it's. I think I'm going to do the ultimate cop-out answer and say I believe it's actually ambiguous without a direct answer to the question.
Well, yeah, it is. That's just true. But
what I'll say is I saw.
What do you think, man? What do you think?
I saw an argument, like an analysis of Blade Runner. Someone arguing like why Deckard has to be a human in order for like the themes of the film to like truly resonate, and if he was a replicant the film would be lesser. And so part of me kind of almost feels a sympathy towards Deckard being a human, because that's again like the idea, like it's about a guy finding his humanity again and all that sort of thing. But on the other hand, like the one shot where it does the eye thing for him, it's like, it's very odd. It's like it's such an odd inclusion, and then it
only does it once.
And so
bring up the eye thing. Harrison Ford's addressed it. It was just reflected light from the set going off his eyes.
Okay. It wasn't like
so
okay.
where I'm coming from
BS answer, and he knows it.
Where I'm coming from here, Ben, as I answer your question, is no, he's not a replicant. Declan made a great point that someone else made for him.
Yes.
And that's that he's finding his humanity in this film. Yes, you see the interbeing connections are stronger among person to person and replicant to replicant. So the relationship with Rachel might bring that into a little bit of doubt. But I think what this film is about is, at its core, it's a commentary on what it means to be human. And I think the relationship that he develops between himself and Rachel, as he's finding these replicants and taking them out, retiring them, with the exception of Roy, whose clock runs out at the end. It's just a matter of Deckard actually being a man. And I think that's, Ben, you didn't ask for explanations. Now you said we'd get to that later, but that's really all I have to say is Deckard's a human, and that's why.
I will leave one thing for you to consider, which is probably the most important thing, in the difference between the final cut and the theatrical cut. Aside from the voiceovers, there's
Ben. Have you seen all 7 cuts of this film?
I have seen that.
You've seen all 7?
Well, there's like 3 of them that are essentially the same, so I really don't count those. It's really just like 4 cuts. So.
Okay.
No, but as you were saying,
as I was saying, in the final cut and the director's cut, you have the so his his partner, he makes these little paper mache, I guess.
The unicorn.
Origami, that's what it is. Yeah, the unicorn. He has a dream of a unicorn. There's a big point of Deckard knowing Rachel's memories because she is a replicant. So it's a nice little tease, but the central thing that I find interesting is ask the question all you want, but it doesn't matter. the replicants are more human, and in some ways that sort of resonates with Deckard, and that Deckard is seemingly the only human that actually really gives a shit about the replicants. You have his partner who sort of just like leaves it alone. But he's the only one that seems to actually empathize with them a little bit, in the way that he treats Rachel. You know,
Well,
Sebastian.
you've got the way that he treats Rachel, and then you got the way that he treats everyone else. Is it just because he's horny for one replicant, or is it because he cares about the entire, replicant kind?
No, I think it's that he's sort of finding some sort of purpose. It's very clear throughout the movie that he doesn't care about his life, doesn't care about being a Blade Runner. And with Rachel, it seems like he's finally has something to protect, essentially, instead of. And so yes, he does end up doing his job with the other replicants, but it shows that he is a tad more human than the other, humans in this story. But I think that is a central theme to it, is the replicants are just more human.
I got a question for you. One other topic in the sphere of, is Deckard a replicant? The comment made right at the end of the film by his CEO, "You just did a man's job." Is that, blatantly saying you are a replicant and you just did the job of a man, or is that's proving to you that you are a man?
No, I think that all of his scenes seem to reinforce the Deckard is a replicant, and he's the one that puts down the origami. Him saying that seems to say, like, yeah, you did a man's job. Like, yeah, you're sort of as good as a man. And then there's another line that he says that I think is one of my favorites. It's too bad she won't live, but then again, who does?
Yeah.
Indicating how similar the replicants are to humans anyway.
Oh, yeah. Know him.
But the real question is Dom Cobb dreaming?
It's true.
That's another issue for another time.
Yeah, we'll have to cover that one later.
We'll do a Nolan deep dive episode.
Oh, that'd be interesting. That'd be interesting.
Now I want to go over probably my favorite, characters in the movie.
Yeah, this is your episode. You won this.
The Nexus 6 replicants. Roy Batty being the main one, Zora, Pris, and Leon. They all come to Earth for the most reasonable thing of all. They want to live.
Yeah.
It's all about survival for them.
Are they the heroes of the film?
In some ways, this film doesn't have any heroes.
Yeah.
It's not about heroes and villains. There are things that are framed as antagonists, but they're just against a certain system.
The system is the enemy.
Yeah, the system is the enemy, man.
Yeah.
But really, the enemy is ideology and thinking that replicants are no more than just slave workers, androids, like lesser than human. Where they show throughout this movie that they are more than humans. That's what Tyrell says. That's their motto: more human than human. And it resonates with the replicants. They, in 4 years, gain emotions, seem to care for each other a lot more than humans do for each other. You see the way that Harrison Ford's boss Bryant treats him, which is just like, I'm forcing you to do this, essentially. Whereas the 4 replicants, they're basically trying to protect each other. And there's a really nice moment at the end with Roy Batty when everyone's dead. His hands are closing up. He puts the crosses in them. He's pseudo crucifying himself like Jesus.
Oh yeah, he is.
and he keeps howling. It's because he's lost his pack.
Yeah,
Oh,
what's his purpose anymore?
Exactly. Well, I mean, he was the oldest one, and he came primarily because he wanted, Pris to live, because he cared for her so much.
mhm.
And I think that's also another sort of similarity between Deckard and Roy Batty, is that they both are doing a lot because they want to protect and care for the person that they love, essentially. And then there's the great line and great scene where uh Deckard's basically he looks terrified. I think it's Harrison Ford's one of his best acting. He just looks terrified being hunted by Roy Batty. And it's the reverse, right? He is the hunted on this in this scenario. And he
That
gets his
whole last sequence is just
Mhm. Mhm.
gets his hand, like Roy Batty grabs his hand, breaks his fingers.
Yeah, I feel like
through
that's
the
like
wall.
that's like
Mhm.
oh
It's
oh
like,
I
"Oh,
like
I thought you were supposed to be good, Deckard. The good man." But questioning not only, his moral compass, but also like how good he is. He's outdated, essentially. These guys are stronger, faster, better than them.
I think like I think that like it's no, it's like I don't even know. I think I just like want to add that like it's funny how like extreme Roy actually gets in the fight between Deckard and him before ultimately saving him. Like it is funny how he seems to like like I forgot the moment when he like smashes his head through the wall and then goes like, oh, you better
Here's
like,
Johnny.
like it was remarkably like
Love it.
wait whoa like it's he's going through a lot of emotions in that scene. I feel like
Well, I
Yeah,
think
I
he's
mean,
really
you
animalistic.
can't talk about that scene, and you talk about all the emotions that Roy is going through. You can't talk about that scene without talking about Tears and Rain.
yes
That
the scene
monologue is
Before we do that,
just okay. Okay, before we do
there's
that,
also there's the scene where he finds Pris's body. He finds her blood and like puts it all on his face.
funny
Mhm.
story about that moment
Mhm.
when you just see the close up of the side of Pris's face, and then you see Roy coming down to kiss her. I could have sworn it was Deckard. I don't know why, but I just saw like the front of a man's face from the side, and I was like, what is Deckard doing right now? And then I realized that Deckard wasn't even in the right room, and then by that time Roy's face had entered the like fully entered the frame. But that was a really fun moment for me. Anyway, Ben, continue.
That's a
Uh,
fascinating thing.
I just wanted to mention that because I love that scene too. It sort of is pinnacle just to show how like messed up he's feeling in that moment. He's lost everything. So yeah, now go for the Tears in the Rain.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just, from a screenwriting perspective, I'm in film school.
Mhm. Oh,
It's
you are?
just gorgeous. You're talking about your own mortality. You're talking about the duality of replicants and humans, and you're talking about, you know, this, I'm paraphrasing, obviously,
Mhm.
this whole messed up world we live in, right?
Mhm.
And so Roy is, moments from his own death. And just to be able to deliver such a profound message in that moment, not everybody, human or replicant or, real world person, is going to have that to say when they know they're dying. And from a screenwriting perspective, just the words chosen are perfect for the moment, the delivery, you know, Could you find another actor to give those lines? Yes. Could you find another actor to give those lines in such a great way? Probably not, if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
This
And
was
I
an
believe
iconic
the
moment in an iconic film, and it's just,
Mhm.
that those 42, 45 some odd words raise the bar on this film entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Not even from a story perspective, but just from the themes that Roy talks about in just a few sentences. It's just like, I've watched that scene 2 or 3 times now after I finished the movie. It's so damn good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I think Rutger Hauer improvised the like tears in the rain part.
The most iconic line. That's why it's
Yeah.
called the Tears and Rain
Mm-hmm.
monologue.
I mean, that just adds to your point about you could you get another
Name another actor.
lines,
Exactly.
but
Yeah, I think it's really quite sweet, and it gets to the point of why he's so upset too, which is like the whole point that came to Earth, did everything was just to live, just to survive, and
Mhm.
now it's not even just survival. Even if Roy's gonna die, he's got all of these memories, things that he's seen that he'll never be able to share because he doesn't have the time, because everyone that he knows is dead.
Well,
Mm.
building on that, the fact that he's saying all of this to Deckard, think about the ears that are receiving this message,
Mm.
how Deckard's sort of approached the whole situation for the whole film,
Mm.
to now be hearing, a replicant,
Say,
sing his swan song in essence, and the profundity of the words that Deckard's hearing from his life experience, what he's taken for granted in life, what he has seen, what memories he would want to share. It's it's a lot as much of a monologue it is to share with the world. There's a lot to take in on Deckard's part,
mm.
and that
Yeah.
moment between the two, I mean, you say it again, the duality of the
Wow.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
But it really reverses everything, and that's why I think I really like. I know you said you had an issue with the pacing, but I really like the way that it's paced. It sort of starts out as more just noir. The further it gets, really the mysteries with the people itself, and then you get to the end where normally the detective would find the bad guy, arrest him, or something would happen. But in this one, Deckard just runs away. He's not fighting him.
Mm.
He's running for most of the time. Um, and Roy says something like, quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which,
And
as
really,
the pseudo villain of the film, is a pretty diabolical thing to hear as the hero in Deckard's
yeah.
shoes, to hear, quite a thing to live in fear. What a badass villain line that is.
Mm.
But it's also reversed everything. To
Yeah,
the point
he's the
where
hunted
Deckard is
instead of the
getting
hunter.
he's getting hunted, he's getting the fear, but then he's also at the end getting saved instead of killed. And he's basically, getting their perspective, um, and just showing, Deckard what's important even to this guy Roy, who's apparently, killed tons of people. Um, he just wanted to live. He just wanted to share his memories, wanted to
Mm.
have a life with his love, Pris. Um, and he can't.
Yeah.
System.
Yeah,
No.
Pris is a great character. Zora's, a little underserved. Leon's a little underserved. You really got to focus in on Pris and Roy
Mm-hmm.
and
I think
Rachel to an extent.
Zora, I think both Zora and Leon, if you look at their scenes, you get a lot out of them.
Oh yeah.
That just sort of, I mean, Zora is a standard pleasure model, but just showing another aspect to the exploitation of the replicants. And I really do love the like bad, acting that Harrison Ford does. Like, hey, I'm here to check for holes.
That part was like so. I feel like that part was like what what's happening? Like
Yeah,
when
I
I
got
first saw it years ago when I was younger. It was so weird.
That scene was a little bit, Peter Parker dancing on top of tables in Spider-Man 3. Like,
I
am I
think that's a
still
little-
watching the same movie?
It's a little unfair, but I don't entirely
Just a
disagree.
little bit.
A little bit.
I really enjoy it because it shows like he's trying to act like one of the people that would be, and you meet the other curious people in that bar.
Is it like the gangster guy? It's
like the gangster guy. You get this man another drink. He's dry.
No, but like you see Harrison, having
But
range
it
within the
totally
same
fits.
character in that scene.
Mhm.
And it's a moment of levity in a pretty dark film.
Yeah.
And it works. It's a great scene.
Oh yeah.
Just a little bit am I watching the same movie?
It's oh.
But I think also the idea was like he was trying to come off as someone really harmless.
Weird.
He's a cop. He's a cop being undercover.
Yeah.
A cop, but also like he was trying to act like harmless.
Yeah. Yes. To like put her off
Surprise her.
guard, make her not think he's about to kill her. But
And then her death is pretty tough to watch. She's bent down in the street. She's just running.
oh yeah.
So like
Great chase scene.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I don't think that both Leon and Zora are clearly not as primary, focuses. But I think their characters still serve very important purposes. And Leon, I really like the first scene with him and Holden, where you're doing
Yeah.
a woodshop
It's
test.
such a like.
Let me tell you about my mother.
Yeah, it's great for like setting the tone of the scene because it's such like a question that puts you off. You're walking in a desert and like flipping a tortoise over, but then also
Tortoise.
like his
If you listen to the
Yeah,
questions,
it's-
they're actually they kind of make sense, and it goes back to what I was saying with replicants being more human than human, more empathetic, more caring, in that the questions are meant to have an emotional response, as in like, why would I do that? Why would I do something like so cruel? And that's what I love. It's like basically they're trying to get them to be emotional. That is the test. To be a replicant is to be emotional.
And to be human is not.
and like
In this,
oh yeah,
in this dystopian 2019, to be human is to be, cold, distant.
Mhm.
Yeah, not like have empathy for other people. Yeah, no, I just realized when you put it like that, like, I mean, aren't there any scenes of a human showing another person empathy? I mean, the closest thing is like JF Sebastian and Pris, kind of.
Yeah, but he's
That's a human
also-
showing empathy to a replicant.
Mhm.
That
Yes,
might be,
and
as we
he-
were talking about earlier, is that, the replicant, like with Rachel and Deckard, is that the replicant rubbing off on the person? I don't think, and Ben, you've seen this film obviously, 40 times, but is there a moment, as Declan and I are both asking here, is there a moment where you see two humans empathetic at all to each other?
No, and honestly, Sebastian, after all the times I've watched it, to me, it's more like he doesn't mind Pris initially, but when she starts fighting with friends over and stuff, it's very clear like he's afraid. You see all the boys, they're like terrified. You see some of their faces, they're like,
Yeah.
and so yeah, and then you have the scene where he has to bring Roy up to Tyrell, and Tyrell is like, I find the relationship between Tyrell and Sebastian is interesting. Tyrell looks at himself so superior to everyone else, that like he literally lets Sebastian up just because he's intrigued. Overconfidence is his downfall.
I'm of course
really
reminded
clearly-
of the chess,
Yeah.
our chess podcast on this channel. Just a
Yeah,
little.
Blade Runner chess. Determine which of the two players is a replicant.
How they play the chess.
But
I will also say, just like as one other just like note, the first time watching it, I don't know why, but I feel like the scene, well, I mean, I guess it makes sense why, but still, the scene of Roy crushing Tyrell's like head like that, I
That's
feel like that like
brutal.
that stood out to me as like really like holy shit, like like a real
it
like
wasn't just him crushing his head.
like
Gouging his eyes.
Just his eyes. Yeah.
it's like it's a real like it's like ugh. Like I
You
feel
know,
like
Powerful.
I said in my Letterboxd review of The Northman, 3
Mm.
words: brutal, just brutal. Nothing in The Northman was as brutal as that scene where Roy and Tyrell are,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess he's mad at his creator, but still, it's like, whoa, yeah.
he also calls him dad in this scene, or father,
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah,
which
Because
is,
he really is. He's sort of like, the father of all the replicants.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's just a very interesting scene. With a lot of, biblical parallels you could draw.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you were the one talking about how Roy crucifies himself, quasi crucifies himself.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. You,
and saves the person hunting him.
true. Oh my gosh, he does. Oh no.
There's never
I'm
been a
realizing
better
so.
there's never been a better Christ metaphor in all of cinema than Roy Batty.
you, you know one
Take that,
character
Chronicles of Narnia.
Harrison Ford and sci-fi, the Christ figures. At least two.
you know one character I think we should also bring up in talking about Tyrell. I feel like we should talk a bit more about Rachel herself. I feel like the one thing that like I felt like uncertain of on this rewatch, kind of, which like it didn't stand out to me as much. I feel like I wasn't sure. What do you guys think of the relationship that developed between Rachel and Deckard? Like, what do you make of it? Like, I feel like, yeah.
It's organic.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a rise and fall to the building of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a central romance, you could say it's not the focus of the film. It shouldn't be the focus
Mm-hmm.
of the film,
True.
but it does show Deckard from the outset. That's the second or third scene of the movie where they meet. It shows him, because he knows he pegs her as a replicant right away from the
Mm.
test, and it shows him what replicants can be, and that sort of alters how he goes about the case and taking out the 4 Nexus 6 replicants. So I think that relationship is key to the story of the film, but just between 2 characters, I don't really see anything wrong with it. I think, you get 2, we'll use the term loosely here, people
Mm.
who obviously care very deeply for each other beyond the surface.
I
There's
think
an emotional connection there that, Rachel brings out of Deckard that's already there in Rachel. So I think that plays really
makes
well
sense.
into the story.
But
Mm.
to your point, like I think they fit really well together just because they're two people who have become disillusioned with like who they are. For Rachel, it's who she's been told she is. And they essentially need each other for a reason to live. They're all they have. So I think it's a very like interesting relationship in that they're so dependent on each other.
Mm.
And you can really see like Harrison Ford, in Rick Deckard, he seems to not care for the first half of the movie. When he starts to fall in love with Rachel, there are moments where he's clearly like afraid for her safety, and he gets a lot more emotional than he has been. And then at the end, like I said, he looks terrified and he's fearful for his life. Whereas before, it just didn't seem like it really bothered him.
Mm.
When he was getting beat up by Leon, it's like it's not quite the same, to the point where it really feels like he has something to lose now. And also going back to your point about like humans being empathetic to each other, Tyrell's like incredibly bad to the point he's essentially, sort of cloning his own niece and just gaslighting her. Pretty messed up. But it also shows like, his God like complex again. That's reinforced literally everything he does.
Yeah.
He clearly just views himself as so much better than even his own family.
Didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's like completely true.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I would say like the one thing that felt weird was I kind of feel like how like Deckard and Rachel, like when they start kissing, I feel like it's a little bit like if it feels strange to see them. I don't know. It's such a weird
Now
scene.
kiss.
Like it seems like it's like, wait, is Deckard forcing himself? But then it's like, oh wait, no, he's not. Okay, good. But yeah, that was the one thing.
Think about it this way: Rachel's probably never kissed someone before. So.
That is true. That is actually true.
But I also think that's also just old style love scene. Is like
true.
It's how it starts out. Like the woman storming out, and it's like, no, you just stay here, and then they embrace each other.
Every romance in every movie from the beginning of film to now.
Well, I don't think romance scenes are quite written the same like that. Not as forceful, like, but it's also replicating, noir like Chinatown. There's always
actually that's neo-noir.
Well, it's replicating noir. Neo-noir would be film. That's
true.
It's different entirely, Declan.
That's different entirely.
Fair, I can see.
But yeah. See, is there anything that we wanted to go over? I think we went over along the solid points. But
one thing I'll just also bring up just very quickly and all that, like when you start to think, it's truly amazing how Ridley's, like when you actually think about Ridley Scott's entire filmography, it's like, holy
The Last Duel.
Yeah, I had a moment at the end credits. I was looking at it, I was just like, holy shit, this guy has directed Blade Runner and The Last Duel, like two films that have similarities but are also extremely different decades even. It's like, who knew Ridley Scott was a great director? No, I'm kidding, but like for real, it's like
Kevin Feige.
4 years before Blade Runner, he did Alien.
Yes, true, like 100%. Like
even like in sci-fi, he's got so much variety.
He also done The Martian, which is like a different type of sci-fi, but still great.
Love The Martian. What a cast.
But yeah, I think Blade Runner is probably, in my opinion, his finest film, just because it's so immaculately put together. The characters just have something to them that I just find very interesting. There's always a question that could be asked about the characters, about philosophically, just about what it means to be human, and just the way that their motivations and their choices and their desires and whatnot are portrayed in this movie. You could just go back and watch it and get something out of it every time, like I said. So I hope you guys watch it again. Hopefully getting more out of it. Hope you all at home will watch the movie once, twice, 500 times. And you've got some good insights. Because I think there's always something to find.
Maybe next time we'll talk about 2049. Well, not next time, but at some point in the future, we could talk about that.
A film that I enjoy, but I do not believe has the depth of the original.
Same Letterboxd average, 4.1 out of 5.
Yeah,
interesting. Very interesting.
Worth noting. Before we wrap up, I just want to make a quick note that I am finally, having seen this film now, I am finally absolved of a admitted mistake I made probably 30 episodes of Unqualified Film Bros ago. We were talking about The Last Duel, and we were doing our Ridley Scott rankings, and I put Blade Runner second. I hadn't seen it, and I'm glad that I have a chance here to come clean about it. So just so that we're all on the same page.
I appreciate
That's Scout's honor, honesty. Coming clean. It's not my second Ridley Scott film. It's my third. I would put, I would go, The Martian, The Last Duel, and then Blade Runner. But yeah, I just wanted to come clean about that before we wrapped up.
I appreciate that. Well done.
And now Declan's gonna admit that he's never seen The Last Duel. Good night.
This whole time I've been playing. I haven't even seen Lincoln this entire time.
All right, or Guardians 2. Benji, take us home.
Well, that was Blade Runner. But I don't know what we're doing next week.
What are
Jurassic World Dominion?
Right,
Jurassic World.
Yeah, that's out this weekend. Max is going to be hosting because I'll be at film school. I'll be on set. Very excited. So I won't be part of that, but you three enjoy Jurassic World Dominion.
Probably won't, but
see how it goes.
All right.
Alrighty, well, we'll see you next week for Jurassic World Dominion.
Oh boy.
Step down.
I won't.
But...
Good night.
Good night, everybody.